Welcome everybody to this week's Eco Community Call. Normally these are bi-weekly, every other Wednesday, I'm sorry. But we decided to do one this Wednesday because we run stable stories every other Thursday. And we figured breaking up the cadence between community calls and foundation stable stories would make the most sense. That way we've got something to chat about every week, but we're not pulling people in back to back on Wednesdays and Thursdays every other week. So I think that it's a bit more of a comfortable cadence for everybody. But yeah, so wanted to take a little time and get to know a few people from the Eco Inc. side on the team, people who you may not have a chance to chat with very often, or are like front and center, like the engineering team or Ryan, but are grinding in their own departments, and hear their stories, figure out what they're into. And this week we chose NFTs and the trenches because we've got Sean and Rob on. Sean is our finance lead at Eco Inc. Rob is marketing lead now at Eco Inc. Everyone probably recognizes Rob, original OG community member that is now full-time with Eco Inc., which is awesome. But figure we'll spend a couple of minutes, do a little deep dive into both of these characters, and then maybe just talk NFTs and trenches, because Sean has an absolute depth of knowledge in the NFT space. He is deep into the NFTs. Rob, all over Farcaster, our resident eco yapper, and probably has all the alpha on what the next narrative or meta is. Cool. So yeah, Sean, want to give the audience a bit of an idea of your background, how you got into crypto, and what you do with Eco?
Eco community, hello there. I am Sean. I got into crypto in 2017. I would say in like March, April, May of 2017, I was telling my father that this Bitcoin thing has to be the most obvious bubble out of any bubble that has ever existed. How could anyone not see it? And then by December 2017, I was buying the top. And so that is how my journey into crypto started. I think that spending 2018 down only from buying the top in 2017, and then really just spending 2018 learning mostly pretty much just about Bitcoin only, helped give me like a really rock solid kind of foundation that is really helpful here in 2025. Whereas a lot of new people that have been getting into crypto just in the last year or two, it's really hard to get started in crypto these days. There's so much going on. There's so many different aspects. And so I think that like year of just focusing on Bitcoin really like set me up for success here. I joined the Eco Inc. team in 2022. I was trying to break into crypto from nonprofit finance for probably a couple of years, and found my way towards Eco that way. So that's a little bit of my journey.
Very cool. Tell us a little more about the nonprofit finance that you were in before Eco.
Yeah, so I mean, I worked for 3 or 4 nonprofit organizations. These nonprofit organizations that were often, international nonprofits would receive grant money from foundations, from the government, to go do things in other places. So I worked at Wildlife Conservation Society has 60 offices around the world doing wildlife conservation projects. We were saving the elephants in Myanmar and things like that. And I was doing the finance for those grants projects. I spent some time at New York Public Library, a nonprofit called Services for the Underserved, and then a little homeless shelter here where I live. And I'm actually not going to finish where I live because we gotta keep it a little bit on private for the community here.
It's still crypto.
But yeah, exactly. And while like working in nonprofits is cool, like I was doing work that I thought was helpful every day, helping the teens, avoid homelessness and things like that. I found it super frustrating still that like the nonprofit space just does not move fast. You can't change processes. You can't even like improve how you're doing your financial reporting and things like that. And so that's where like moving into crypto, moving into startups, moving into tech, you really see like that pace of development and acceleration and growth. And it's definitely something that I um, honestly like recommend to everyone diving into tech and startups and things like that.
Makes sense. I read a tweet a couple days ago that was like a buddy of mine, got burnt out on crypto and decided to find a job in Web 2. And he was back in 6 months. He's like, my dopamine receptors are just entirely fried. I can't handle the pace. But you came with your
Yeah,
dopamine receptors pre-fried. You were looking forward to begin with. I like it.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Nice. Cool. Thanks. Rob, what about you? I mean, what's your background? What'd you do before eco? And yeah, for those who don't know, how'd you come across it?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start like how Sean started with like my intro to crypto. I had like a buddy in college who was talking about Bitcoin in like this was like 2013, 2014. And I was just like really fascinated with, just the ability to like buy this like token that was totally decentralized and kind of also infatuated with the volatility of the price. And I wasn't really like focused on investing it at that point in my life because I had no job. I was just a broke college student. But just like reading about, like people using Bitcoin like on the Silk Road, which I know is like kind of a still relevant topic now that Ross Ulbricht has been pardoned. And I was just kind of like following that whole story and saga and just was just fascinated by it. I thought it was a really interesting story, but I wasn't even really buying Bitcoin at the time, was just aware of it. And then when I graduated college in 2015, I'd moved or graduated college 2015, still kept up with it, was living on my own, getting my teaching credential, which I can go into in a little bit. And then towards the end of my teaching credential program, I had moved back home to my parents' house to save money and then prepare for getting a full-time teaching role. And then at that time, I was substituting and making some money, didn't have to pay rent at my parents' place, which was awesome. And so at that point, I was like, well, I should probably be investing some of this money. And like, first like just dove into like growth and tech stocks. And then I was like, oh, what about this Bitcoin thing that I remember from college? And so started like doing some research about Bitcoin again. And that's how I found out about Coinbase. And then when I was on Coinbase, I saw this thing called Ethereum, and that's when I like really, really dove in, started learning about Ethereum, and I liked the idea of like kind of like a decentralized app store. And just like, I was like, well, I see a lot of promise with like the future of Ethereum because people are able to build on top of it, whereas Bitcoin, it didn't really seem like it had that ability. And now we're starting to see people building on top of Bitcoin, which is also really exciting. So at that point, I started investing, and like most people here, I'm sure, found my way to crypto Twitter and just started following all these random accounts, trying to get alpha and figure out what was going on in the space, and just figure out anywhere I could learn. And so from that point on, I was just like keeping tabs on new projects and investing in things, most of which no longer exist or are like at zero naturally. But yeah, I mean, it just like that kind of kickstarted my interest in the space. And I was mostly just like a lurker on Twitter. Wasn't really getting involved much in communities or anything like that. And this was kind of the early days where there really wasn't like a Discord presence anywhere. And eventually I went into full-time teaching shortly after moving back home, living at my parents' house. That started in 2017. Then moved to LA, where I taught at the school that I just left to go full-time with eco up until this year. So I was a teacher at a public elementary school for 8 years, teaching physical education, which is totally on the complete opposite side of the professional spectrum. And very similar to Sean, I just kind of became frustrated and like just a little jaded with how much bureaucracy was like baked into public education, how slow things moved. You just really couldn't like just go and do things. And I was seeing that in the crypto space. People were just building things, shipping things, And there was just a lot of autonomy, kind of like there was just an ethos of autonomy around the crypto space, and to me that was very, very interesting. Um, and at one point, I kind of like left, um, like the crypto space. I wasn't on Twitter as much. I think that was like when the first like big bear market hit around like 20, was it 2019, 2020, something like that. And just lost interest mostly because my bags lost all their value. And then when COVID came back around, a buddy who I actually introduced to crypto was like, "Hey, I think this is a good time to like get back into paying attention to the space." And that's how I found out about Eco. I got back on Twitter, crypto Twitter, and funny enough, there was this page that I followed during the ICO era called ICO Drops, and that was kind of like my go-to like alpha site for like upcoming ICOs. They put me on like Filecoin and a couple other ones that was uh, pretty nice payday for me. But they tweeted about Eco, and I was like, huh, this is interesting. I went to the link that they posted, and it was this really cool like type form survey, that had these like vague questions, but that had like way different ways that people could answer them. And if you answered it like a crypto native person, you fell into the Eco Discord. So it was this really cool funnel to kind of like funnel people either to what was the Eco mobile app, which was a neo banking stablecoin app that we used to have for people in the United States. But if you answered as a crypto person, you would get funneled into the Discord because that's where like the crypto native people were living. And that was my first entry to like a community in crypto, was dropping into the Eco Discord. And that's kind of where it started for me with Eco. I dropped in, I saw points being spread around all over the Discord. I was like, how do I earn these points? So just started getting active, created a community podcast with the buddy who I mentioned earlier, who told me we should start paying attention to crypto. Shout out to Josh. He's still lurking around on crypto Twitter, not as involved in Discords anymore. But yeah, we did a podcast, and that helped me kind of build a rapport with the team. And I was always just keeping tabs on the job board, seeing if there's anything that would align with like kind of my skill set. Not really being much of a technical person, but have learned some technical things since then. And then fortunately, Dave, who was community manager at the time, posted a part-time job for a community management role. And it was just like the stars aligned at that moment. It was, I was like, this is perfect. I can, do this while also teaching full time because it's a part-time gig. I get off of school pretty early, and then I can just like dive into the Discord when I got home from school. And yeah, did that for a couple years. And that eventually led me to a full-time marketing role, working with Jay once he got brought on as the CMO. And yeah, that's the long-winded version of my crypto to eco story.
Love it. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. Cool. So I kind of want to touch on something both you guys mentioned before, like it ties into the NFTs, and sort of the trenches more generally, but everyone seems to like come to crypto at the top of a cycle. It's like there's these generations of of crypto natives that find the industry typically at a peak, get absolutely massacred, and then those that are left for the next cycle are kind of like in it for the long haul. But I'm wondering, like, previous cycles, there have been these things like Bitcoin, things like Ethereum, even like DeFi and NFTs to an extent, that really seem to have like a bit of a philosophy or an ethos behind it. And I'm wondering, from your guys' perspective, this new generation that's coming in now, over the last year or so, with like this sort of the antithesis of that this sort of like financial nihilism, that seems to be been espoused with meme coins. And don't get me wrong, I love the meme coins myself, but do you think that there's a chance of a lot of like attrition going into the next cycle? Like, does the new blood stay for what comes next, or are you guys seeing like there being a different pattern emerging in the way that people are coming to the crypto space at least from traditional rails. Like we talk about institutions coming, and mass adoption, and I think that that's a bit of a different monster. But just for like the way that people have been finding the industry in the past, do you see a difference happening now, or it's just the same thing over and over again? Sean, maybe you want to take that one to begin with, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are definitely going to come in mostly from speculative rails. Like people that I know in my local residents are definitely coming into crypto. They were in on meme coins. They had no Bitcoin, no Ethereum, but they knew how to go on Dex Screener and look for the newest meme coins on Solana and things like that. I don't know if meme coins will be the thing of the cycle. They kind of have been so far. I think probably AI and stable coins are going to be the thing that like brings in that retail crowd. And with the AI stuff in particular, like I mean, with with ICOs, I guess, with DeFi, with NFTs, people come in, it becomes way too much of a bubble. The tech isn't quite ready for the actual real adoption and things like that. And then 90% of people leave. And what happens is that like a couple of years later, you see the things that have stuck around for actually 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. And so now, in 2025, we've got our revenue generating DeFi protocols, our Aves and our makers that are still sticking around, and they're generating real revenues and things like that. And in the NFT space, I would say that there's like a couple of artists in particular that have maybe either grown or maintained their relevance throughout the NFT bear, and that's where some people might be looking as the thing comes back, and it's not the same surge. And I think that pretty much everybody who joined those things when the hype was there have left for the most part, or a lot of people have left and not come back. And so I tend to think that that'll be the same thing again, where most of the people that come into crypto now are probably going to do it on some like meme coin and then AI related thing. I think a lot of people would love to do it for stable coins, but stable coins are not that easy to invest in directly kind of at this point. And I think most of those people are going to leave, and then they're going to miss out. And then in like 3 to 4 years or something like that, the trends that are here now will start to have a couple of key leaders like emerge, having gone through the bear and come out the other side of things.
Yeah, same, but different, but still same.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. Yeah, cool. Rob, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sean like nailed it on the head. With when new trends pop up, we see an influx of like, new players in the space. We had the ICO era, which brought in a ton of people just speculating and throwing money at different projects, hoping that they would, 10, 100x. And me being one of those people. And then, we kind of had like the NFT boom, and it was like 2021, 2022. And this was just like this new, I wouldn't really say new or novel, because you had crypto kitties that like popped up way before, but the just general awareness of NFTs became pretty big around that 2021, 2022 era. And that was a huge catalyst for the space, brought in a bunch of people who weren't necessarily crypto native or looking to invest in crypto directly, but brought in people who were interested, that people just from different corners of the internet who maybe were just interested in a new form of art. And so that was like a really cool catalyst to watch. And I was also one of those participants who was just throwing money at all these different NFT projects, getting burned on 99% of them. And then the NFT buzz and hype kind of wore down, and then we I guess the meme coins kind of became like the next catalyst. And so I think like I always like say like, oh, there's not going to be any like new catalyst anymore, because we've like run through the gamut, it feels like. But it seems like every couple of years there's some new you know thing that pops up in the space that brings in a ton of people. Um, I definitely think that like retention is a problem because of these, these trends that kind of like bring people in, with, you know, with hopes of making a bunch of money, and then they get burned, and then they're like, I'm never touching it again. And I kind of went through that myself, you know, when I brought it up earlier with, you know, when I got interested in crypto and started investing, and then we had like our first big bear market, and that kind of just put me off, and I stopped paying attention to crypto for a couple of years. And then, you know, the black swan event of COVID happened, and that became a really good time to start investing money, and crypto being one of those industries where people were kind of piling money into. And so, you know, from my own personal perspective, like I came back. And so I think, you know, there's going to be like those people who left and got burned, you know, they might not come back, but they also might come back if there's some kind of new trend that's appetizing to them. And I think what's really cool to see, you know, working at Eco, where we're building stablecoin infrastructure, is seeing, you know, the adoption of stable coins and the total supply of stable coins continuously going up into the right. I mean, you know, non-biasedly, like I think stable coins really are one, if not only, like crypto's killer app at the moment. And you know, it's, I guess, you know, you could phrase that however you want, but it seems like stable coins are like, you know, something that can actually do some good in the world, on a large scale globally, with crypto technology powering that, as opposed to these like other things that we've talked about. And like, you know, DeFi got brought up, and I think DeFi is also, another, you know, great, you know, thing that popped up in the space that gives people a little bit more financial freedom to kind of not have to like rely on a bank, and you can kind of, you know, do a loan on your own. So that's also something I'm pretty excited about for like the future of crypto down the line. And as Sean mentioned, you know, there's, when these like trends popped up, there was, you know, like the tech just wasn't there, or the user experience wasn't there, and I feel like we're starting to get there. Um and and it's happened quick. It seems like it's been a long time, but the space is still very, very, you know, young. And these new cool products are just being built and shipped, you know, on the regular. So it's exciting to be involved, and also just witness too, as a fan of the industry.
Yeah, you touched on a good point there. I like one of my own personal takes is I think that we are in some ways really easy on ourselves about building applications that people can actually use, but in some ways I think the industry is really, really hard on itself. Because frankly, we chose, like, in Ethereum at the very least, like I think as a community, a development path was chosen, and that development path was like intentionally hard, and fraught with contention, and you know, a bunch of projects reinventing the wheel. But it was a necessary path to sort of hopefully um, some core ethical beliefs into how this system should operate at the end. And I think what that meant is, you know, we just weren't at a point where, even if we had the best product developers in the world, building amazing front ends, the tech just wasn't there for it. So what did we do? We spent a couple of years playing these like self-referential games, trading money back and forth, screwing around in the casino with each other, because we were the only ones that knew how to use the tools that were being built. But I have this idea in the back of my mind that now finally that we're sort of like reaching that point where the back end tech is catching up, and we can build products that real people can interact with in a reasonable way. Um, like, the world has already solved good products. There's a million great product developer or builders and managers out there, designers, that when the back end is ready, it's like if you build it, they will come. And I think we finally at a point where we've built it. And I think that adoption of better design standards in UX and UI is going to be implemented a lot faster than people think. I might be totally wrong, but I think that's the way it's going to go. I hope that's the way it's going to go at the very least. You know, with the core philosophy still intact at the very least. But that said, let's move on to the real meat and potatoes of this. Rob, you mentioned CryptoKitties a while back. I am diamond handing my original CryptoKitties that I minted way the hell back when. Sean, when are they coming back? Are my CryptoKitty bags gonna skyrocket? What's going on in the NFT space right now? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I
I
never
said
really
joke,
went
but
and looked at
I
the.
appreciate my crypto kitties are dead, by the way. You don't actually have to answer that one specific.
Well, there could be something to the Generation One crypto kitties before they multiplied too long. And
Hopefully.
honestly, like you're right about the tech improving, and like I'm really genuinely super psyched that like we're going to be building tools and products and apps that everyday people can use without realizing that they're using crypto, or they're getting the benefits without the headache and all of that. But I will like say, for the putting on the investor hat, um, the asymmetric upside to something comes because of the fact that it is hard, right? Like the fact that crypto is hard to use is your asymmetric upside as an investor. And so, like, sure, grandma will be able to use crypto, pretty fast, probably, and getting like a Web 2 like user experience. But once that happens, a lot of the upside and the opportunity has been captured already. And so, I just, want to throw that out there as it's not so bad that things are hard right now. It is the fact that it is hard is opportunity, and hopefully we are going to be the ones to solve it on the stablecoin kind of side. So I have some thoughts on NFTs too, but is there anything you want to bounce off of that first?
I agree with that totally. I actually, the first thing that sprung to mind when you said that, we're trying to build. So I think again, everyone here knows we've got the eco portal up and running, and there's a button that we have on there that if you're on the wrong chain, it tells you to switch to the chain that you need to switch to in order to make the conversion between stablecoins. And it just does it automatically for you. It doesn't pop MetaMask up. It's just like you click the chain, click change chain, and it changes the chain. And people were actually complaining, not complaining, but like observing that it didn't feel like crypto. Like it worked too well. And I find it funny that we're so deep into this at this point. We've become so like accustomed to specific, even broken UX flows that we're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not crypto. So it's really funny that you talk about that too. Yeah, it's a fun little anecdote. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm,
good.
I'm
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to piggyback off of that just a little bit more too. So, like, right now we've got, or the Eco Portal is live. There's more parts of the Eco Protocol that are being developed by a bunch of different people right now. But like right now, for example, for stablecoins, there's all these people that want to launch their own stablecoins, and all of these stablecoins are on all of these different chains. And so, like, what we have is that crypto are these programmable assets. We have these programmable assets, but they're still existing in these like siloed ecosystems because you've got different stables on different chains and all of this other stuff. What is happening now, like what we're working on at Eco Inc. and what other people are working on with Eco and other teams as well, is taking these like programmable assets and turning them into like a programmable network where like the whole money, whatever you have, is like operating as part of like one single network. And so, all of your dollars, your digital dollars can flow to wherever they need to go, often autonomously. And, it's not just like a user experience thing, it's also an app builder thing, it's also an app chain kind of thing. But all of that is to say, like taking programmable assets and turning them into a programmable network is something that is going to help in like a lot of this, and is something that like we're actively thinking about at Eco Inc. for sure.
Yeah, massive unlock. I think the fragmentation was like a natural step in the evolution of the industry, but definitely something that needs to be needs to be solved for ASAP. Cool, amazing. Yeah, you want to do NFT? You want to do NFTs? I want to hear what's new in your world, because we actually haven't had, me and Sean have a chat every now and again when one of us can like remember to remind the other. And it's been a while since our last chat. So what's new in NFT, Sean?
Yeah, and like I am a finance guy, like I am a numbers guy through and through. And so like why am I still buying NFTs in 2025, and why do I still love NFTs so much? I think a lot of it is that in NFTs, compared to all of these coins, there are far fewer like insider games or like manipulative mechanics and things like this, at least in a lot of the art space that I mostly find myself operating in. You don't have to worry about VC unlocks. You don't have to worry about insiders dumping or anything like that. When you're talking about NFTs, particularly NFT art, you mostly just have to focus on like supply and demand. Is this artist or is this project going to get more people to want to buy the JPEG for whatever reason, then sell it? So there's kind of like a purity there that I find particularly compelling. And when you think of those games and things like that here in 2025, I mean, all of these coins are struggling. And so like you look at I look at what I'm seeing here, and like I would rather have like an X copy edition or a Beeple anything compared to pretty much any token that's out on the market right now, because it's just something that I feel like is a more surefire kind of like way to go about looking at the crypto landscape in general. There's far fewer games, but even though they've been out for like a couple of years, I just like would love to highlight that there's really nothing more interesting that is happening in NFTs, in my opinion, than like the checks, OPEPN, Jack Butcher, visualized value world, especially in terms of like crypto ethos. So like checks is a bit simple, but you basically have, but it's probably the coolest like on-chain art experience that I've seen. And like on-chain art, where the art is actually living on the Ethereum blockchain, is super cool compared to art that's stored for like most NFTs, either on a database or an IPF or something like that. So like checks, you start with 80 checks, you've got different colors, rarities, whatever. And what happens is that it's all on chain, and using these on chain contracts, you can migrate two checks together on chain, and then you get like a merged check pattern that has fewer checks on it. So you start with 80, you merge two artworks into one, and then the 80 checks become 40, then it becomes 20, 10, 5, 4, and 1. So you have this like deflationary on-chain art mechanic. And it takes like 64, 80 checks burned to get to one single check. It's all happening on chain. And because it's all done on these like open public contracts, the community has created these tools where you can actually like see the outcome of merging different checks together, what it would be, what it would look like before you do it. And so people have created some like absolutely gorgeous color patterns and symbols like in the on-chain migration process. And it's like entirely on chain again. So like I find that super cool. And then OPEPN is honestly like a stunning art experiment to me, honestly. It's an art protocol. So unlike typical NFT collections that drop all at once with fixed traits, OPEPN launched with 16,000 unrevealed tokens, and like a completely different model where you have these unrevealed 16,000 tokens, and holders of the unrevealed tokens choose when and what art to reveal, or to not reveal anything at all. So the 16,000 art pieces can get broken into 200 sets of 80, and each set of 80 is a reinterpretation of this like core OPEPN symbol. And so artists, and it's not just one artist, it's anyone around the world, can submit a set of 80 to be included in the official 200 set collection. But the kicker is that a set doesn't become part of the official collection of OPEPN, the official 200 sets of OPEPN, unless it reaches consensus. So like a 200% opt-in rate from people that are holding these blank, unrevealed art pieces. And so if not enough people want a set, it never becomes consensus, and it never becomes part of the official collection. And so unrevealed holders have to opt in to a given set, which will turn their possibly unrevealed art into a revealed OPEPN that is part of the final OPEPN Museum of 200. I know I'm saying a lot of words there, but what I want to kind of like convey is that while most NFT projects are like a point in time snapshot of like a period of culture or something at like a given point in time, OPEPN is able to capture like the now constantly, because sets are only revealed or when they're submitted and then revealed. And so like it's been live for almost 2 years, and only about 70 out of the 200 sets have reached consensus. And so by the time all 200 reveal, if they even ever do, you have this like art museum based on the OPEPN symbol from all of these different artists that spans years of culture and important moments and memes and some like really incredible artists. And so just to like wrap that up, what's so cool about this to me is that it is like an art realization of crypto's core principles, where you have permissionless access, where anyone in the world can submit a set based on this OPEPN symbol. You know, whether you're anonymous or doxed, anyone can submit a set. You have distributed consensus, where the community, not like a curator or a company, decide what gets minted. You know, an immutable history where every choice and submission and reveal is all on chain. And like when all of these different things about crypto's ethos, decentralization, you know, community, consensus clicked for me, like it honestly kind of blew my mind. And so like this is an ongoing like experiment in art. I'm not saying it's going to be valuable, that it's like worth buying for investment value or anything like that. But just like in terms of what is super interesting, I think that both of these are like by far some of the coolest things that are happening in crypto art for sure.
That's awesome. What strikes me as really interesting is both examples are functionally impossible to execute absent blockchain and crypto, right? Like
That's right.
the checks is leveraging on-chain mechanics in a way that it produces like net new styles of art fundamentally. And OPEPN is leveraging governance to do the same thing. And without that crypto foundation, it just wouldn't be possible, which is like super exciting.
That's right. And it's like at a time where governance in a lot of other areas of crypto has either stagnated or is not working exactly right, or it's not benefiting the right parties, and it's really challenging and tricky to figure out. And so it's like, what can we learn from these experiments outside of the, you know, the coin, the fungible coin space, to maybe make better governance for other types of crypto projects as well?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe it's the starting point. Like maybe it's the fundamental incentive that exists in the first place, right? If you start from a
Yeah.
financialized incentive, then you run into all of these problems when you try and slap inorganic governance on top of it that's maybe premature or not like well scoped out. Whereas if you start with a community of aligned art collectors that want to experiment and build, you know, you have a fundamentally different result.
I agree. Yeah.
Which is funny because like I see that sort of happening in some of the agentic protocols as well, that have a predominant builder community that is coming to crypto from AI, and not AI native users to begin with, right? It's a
Yeah.
completely it's a very different vibe in some of those projects, and frankly, like really inspiring, because it's using crypto to achieve an end rather than you know, starting from perhaps a misaligned place to begin with. Nice. Rob, what about you? Are you anything exciting you in the space? We can open it up. It doesn't have to be NFTs. Just what's on your radar right now?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I definitely like for me, I've kind of sidelined myself from the NFT space. I think like one cool like use case of an NFT that I experienced recently was playing Crypto the Game. You know, where you sign up and you get an NFT that kind of solidifies your spot in the game. And it was also interesting to see that, you know, the person who won, Ted, who's a friend of mine, she was actually out of the game and somebody transferred their NFT to her so that she could come back into the game, and she ultimately ended up winning. So I think that was like a pretty cool like use case to see, you know, how NFTs have some utility outside of just, you know, um, potential gains. So that was really exciting to see, and then something like kind of novel with NFT technology. But outside of that, I mean, you know, I'm you brought it up earlier about, you know, Farcaster and being like pretty active on there. I think, you know, social fi has always just been kind of laughed at, and I mean for good reason. Like most of the first SocialFi projects just totally, you know, missed it completely and just, you know, swung and missed. But I think what's cool about Farcaster and Warpcast in general is, you know, I kind of see it as like this like marriage of Reddit and Twitter, and where, you know, most of the folks on there are already crypto native, and when you you know, set up an account on Warpcast, you're, you know, automatically put on chain with your account, and you get a wallet, a native wallet within the account as well. And I think that's going to be a really big driver for getting people into the space. Just the social fi aspect. I think Warpcast is doing a really good job. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time on Lens. I think when I first tried to like get going on Lens, the UX just like wasn't there, and so I got kind of just like put off by it and wasn't really interested in it. And then when WordCast kind of sprung up and caught some hype, I kind of just dove in because it was just very familiar. And so yeah, that's probably like the most exciting thing for me. I mean, outside of stablecoins, you know, biasly very bullish on stablecoins because what we're building at Eco. But yeah, that's pretty much it at this point. Nothing else that's too crazy. I mean, the AI thing was like, you know, I feel like it came and went pretty quick. And you know, all these like agents that popped up during that little span of time that, you know, people were, you know, thought boying on, you know, what was going to happen with AI agents, and you know, they're still being leveraged to some degree, but it just seems like the hype has kind of died down. And I'm sure at some point there's going to be like this crazy new, you know, novel use case for AI that pops up and becomes like the meta. Um, but yeah, I would say right now focus is just, you know, getting more acclimated into the what's happening on WordCast. Something really cool that I just came across on there was there's this community called Hire that kind of sprung up out of WordCast, and um, for me is like the S tier model for like just organically you know, building and growing a community of people that are, you know, interested in crypto, or, you know, kind of interested in crypto but more interested in the social aspect of it. They just launched this like new native kind of like incentive in Warpcast where if you go into the higher channel and you post a goal that you're working towards, you'll get rewarded with like, I think it's like 600 higher tokens. And like, I know those models have, you know, have been used to some degree with like points and, you know, posting to Twitter, and, you know, people like will farm stuff like that. But I don't know, the flow and the, I guess just like the idea behind it and what they're trying to encourage people to do, I think is like has a little bit more like salt to it as opposed to these like other, you know, incentive based things where people are just kind of like trying to farm their way into generational wealth.
Totally. I think for what it's worth, the new AI, the resurgence of AI is now exclusively to turn my entire Reddit feed into Studio Ghibli images. Is that
Studio Ghibli is so hot right now.
is everywhere. The
It's
one thing,
everywhere.
like the thing I find really interesting about Farcaster, like I get like it's you know, compared to Twitter, it's way off. Like it's still relatively limited adoption outside of crypto, but just decentralized social generally, and the ability for creators to take their communities with them, and the ability for, you know, users and frankly entire communities to rage quit platforms and not lose connections or assets related to their social circles is incredibly powerful. Like at the end of the day, these decentralized primitives, when you put them together, you look at AI, you look at, you know, let's say stablecoin or interop infrastructure, you look at social. These are all like core required pieces of the puzzle when you're putting together this sort of picture of a truly decentralized internet, where users can own their content, users can own their value, and move it seamlessly across platforms. So like, yeah, I admittedly I don't use Farcaster too much. I pop on there when needed and sort of keep track of it, but just from a from a from a decentralization standpoint, I think having something like that as a primitive in the space is like so important. And right now, Farcaster is sort of leading that charge, so it makes total sense. Cool, awesome. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, do it.
Like, I have debated within myself for the longest time, like, where do I want my own personal doxed like .eth to live, right? Like, where do I want, I don't have Sean.eth, but like, where do I want Sean.eth to live? That's public. People know that it's me. They can send me things, whatever. Like, is it a hot wallet? Is it some hardware wallet? But then I have to like bring the hardware wallet if I want to do anything with it or whatever. And so like, I really like the idea of Farcaster being my, and the Warpcast wallet being my like default doxed crypto wallet that I can attach to like any action that I want to do for anything. So like, that starts with Farcaster, that starts with like, say, using Rodeo or Zora or something like that, logging in with Farcaster and having those connections. I'd like it to be like the hub for my newsletter or something like that with Paragraph. I know you can link your Farcaster, but it's not like a sign in with Farcaster. I'd like to be able to connect that into like Eco in some way. And so like, I'd like that basis, the social graph, to be the start for everything that I do that is connected to like me as my unique on-chain identity. And like, they're building towards it, but like, it's not really there right now. And like, the wallet, you can't really like wallet connect easily to other applications outside of Farcaster, but there is a frame for it, but it's kind of janky. And like, the most of the focus is on Warpcast, obviously, but like these other applications, you can connect your Farcaster, but they still give you your own privy wallet for those applications like Zora and Rodeo. And I wish that it could just like be my Farcaster wallet logging in. And so like, the seeds are all there, but the connections are not like fully made yet. And like, it's not a given that they ever will be fully connected because everyone wants you to be in their own wallet and X, Y, and Z. But like, I'm really rooting for, and that's why I'm still like posting on Farcaster every couple days to like hope that these connections get made that really let it be that kind of hub for my own on-chain identity right now. Like, I see the primitives, but they're not like fully connected just yet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sean. Like, it's almost like kind of analogous to like the stablecoin fragmentation problem that we're trying to solve with Eco. It's like you have all this, all these really fun apps and cool tech that are being built on the blockchain, but it's still so fragmented. And like, I'm sure most people in here can relate to app fatigue. It's like, oh yeah, this looks cool and sounds cool, but I don't want to like jump into a new app and have to spin up a new wallet. And so, yeah, I hope, kind of like how Sean was pointing to, that like we can get to some point of singularity where I don't have to manage, a million different wallets. I don't have to, bounce around to a million different apps. And I think that's what's cool about, what we're starting to see with Farcaster is, especially with like frames, you can just like natively interact. I mean, there's still very few where it's, an easy, seamless flow, but there's a couple out there that, are kind of like getting us to that point of singularity where you don't have to be spread out across all these different dApps and social platforms and things like that. And so, I mean, unfortunately, it's like we have, Twitter I don't think is ever going to go away, and I think Warpcast has a very very steep uphill battle with finding their place in the social media arena. But as a crypto native user, it's definitely made certain things easier to just like pop into an app, see what's going on in the space. It's mostly Ethereum folks on there, which, for me, that's like where I spend most of my time, like reading and researching anyways. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if we can get to that point where, we don't have to create a new wallet for every new application that we want to try out.
Definitely. yeah, it's going to be, it goes back to the networking thing, right? And it's funny, it's usually like the forcing function is usually necessity, or something pops up that is orders of magnitude better than what's available out there at the moment, right? In terms of adoption. So we'll see which one of those two it is. Um, if Elon decides to ban all AI bots on X, they're gonna have to go over. They're gonna have to go somewhere. Maybe Farcaster's the home if there's a resurgence. If you need to get your Studio Ghibli photos done up somewhere, maybe it's Farcaster in the future. Cool. We've covered a bunch here. Do you guys want to maybe start thinking about winding it down? Maybe the last thing we can touch on, just real quick and dirty. What's the new big meta coming up? Is it something that's already popped up? It's a resurgence, or is it something that new? What's on the horizon next 6 months? What are we all going to be like yapping about?
Yeah, it feels like it's probably something AI related. Maybe social AI. I don't know. That's very bland. That's very, very generic. Is it the same agents that we saw before? Is it some kind of like new application? I don't know. Everyone's going to be trying to get a piece of the stablecoin pie. What's amazing about Eco is that Eco can thrive even if everybody is trying to get their own piece of the pie by being the networking liquidity network layer for all of these kind of like separate pieces. And so Eco can thrive even though everyone's trying to get their own piece of the stablecoin pie. But what does that like look like in practice? This is not objectively not what the next thing is going to be, and so I'll pass it on to Rob next. But I'm just saying that like I personally would love to see more like cypherpunk stablecoins developed that are not just like fiat backed in the bank, that are like uncensorable, unseizable, maybe crypto collateralized. I don't know. Backed kind of like true crypto cypherpunk ethos stablecoins getting launched. I'd like to just see that being developed more because stable coins are great, and I love stable coins. They make the world a better place. But if they can still just be shut down or frozen by an arbitrary press of a button, then their maximum potential is limited. And so I'd like to see more experimentation on the stablecoin front, while I also hope that nothing new major happens that like explodes an algorithmic stable and sends it to zero or something.
Could not agree with that more. Yeah, you're all about Reflexor and Amin, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 100%. Rob, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I spend like 90% of my day keeping tabs on the stablecoin space, and it just seems like every day there's some new institution that's spinning up their own stablecoin, or you have M0, who's a launch pad for companies or protocols that want to spin up their own stablecoin, and to me it just seems like that's like really going to be the driving force of crypto over the next, I think 6 months and beyond. I think we'll always have like some new interesting trend, like we've touched on, like the DeFi, NFTs, AI. I'm sure there will be something new that has its moment. But I think as far as like something that's going to stay tried and true over the next few months to a few years and beyond is definitely going to be stable coins. Very bullish stable coins, and feel very fortunate to be at a company that's helping solve the stablecoin problem.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks, guys. One more question for you. Mile-long stairwell under the pyramids, fact or fiction? We buying it?
Fiction. I'm not buying
Fiction?
it
No?
whatsoever. Or sorry, yeah. Fiction. Like I don't think, I don't know. I'm very like anti conspiracy theory. Like I need cold hard facts. I don't go down the conspiracy rabbit hole until we have some
You gotta
actual
go down
factual
there and
evidence.
unwrap one of the mummies and see it for yourself before you're buying it.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Yeah, Sean, you a conspiracy theorist? I'm all about
I'm conspiracy friendly at the very least. I'm happy to listen and indulge.
it. Love it. Very diplomatic answer. I'll take it. Cool. We went way over. This was fun. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Yeah, good community call. I think I'll call it here. And everyone go enjoy your Wednesdays. Thanks for joining.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.